Welcome to round 4 of the MCC Classic. In this round, I had the white pieces against a 1485 rated opponent, playing the Jobava London, and they played a6 to stop the knight b5 hop. We play the main line of e3, e6, and knight f3 here. Computer here suggesting g4 as the best move. Looking to start this pawn storm on the king side. It's definitely a position I'm going to have to look at in the future. Computer then suggests bringing bishop b4. We go knight e2 to reinforce, and then after castle, we can continue with trying to kick away this bishop. The bishop does come back, either d6 or e7, or maybe d6. We can already start to push all the way through here and start kicking around this knight. So pawn storm, then perhaps bringing the queen and castling at some stage. Knight e8, might have h4, continue with this pawn storm. After knight c6, still not taking or trading, queen d2, and then even here after takes, we can take back with the knight, not the pawn. Keep the pawn structure intact. And then even here, redeploying knight d6, and then perhaps we're even looking to castle queen side here. So definitely something to look at for the future. Very interesting position. Already gotten this pawn storm going. Lots of pressure. Perhaps the bishop's going to come. Natural development move. We can look at bishop d3, and lots of pressure on the king side here as well. So definitely going to look into g4 in the future in these a6 positions, but not what we played in the game. We played knight f3. Opponent strikes back with c5 straight away, and we take. Opponent takes back with the bishop, all the best moves. And here we develop to the natural square for the bishop in the London. d3, looking along this diagonal here, down to the h7 pawn. Opponent develops knight c6, and we castle. Opponent castles, and we've got a very equal position here out of the opening. Here, first inaccuracy of the game, I played rook e1, thinking I was reinforcing the e4 push, but computer already wants the e4. Here to start putting pressure on the center. So we've lost our center pawn, the d pawn. So this would have been good to start fighting back already. Computer saying here, there's h6, there's bishop e7, takes, and we take back with the knight. Knight takes e4, putting pressure onto the bishop. Knight can take back here, but also computer wants knight h5. So yeah, it would have been an interesting line pushing back already in the center with e4. At least then we would have been fighting back. The central pawns all come off, but this e6 pawn isn't doing as much, and we have maybe some open lines in the future. We can continue with all the trades. Bishop takes at the end of that, and then the queen needs to find a new home. Taking here is not ideal at all because black's going to give the open file to white, the open d file. So perhaps even knight f6, getting the queen out of the way. Another interesting position. So e4, trying to get some open lines, get these bishops active. Perhaps now we get the queen, d2 maybe, and get the rooks into the game on these open files. But rook e1, not e4. Opponent plays b5. And still we have e4 as the best move. Here I played not a terrible move, but a3. Worried about these pushes against the knight. Not wanting the knight to necessarily have to hop out too far to a4. So a3 to stop the b4 push. Opponent natural development, bishop b7. And played knight e2 here. All the while, computer's still screaming e4 for all those reasons we looked up before. My plan here was to redevelop the knight towards the center to lock down the central pawn and lock down this bishop. That would become active if this d pawn ever moves. Here, opponent plays rook e8, and we continue with that plan. Knight d4. The knight e d4. Opponent brings the rook, continuing their development, and here just anchoring with c3. Still not 100% sure what my overall game plan is here, but definitely not to trade straight away until something happens from black. So yeah, just keeping the position nice and strong. Here, opponent offers the trade of bishops. Thought my bishop on the dark square was doing quite well, so I wasn't too keen on trading off this bishop all too soon, but it is the top line of the computer. Thought this did help my opponent to develop their queen, but obviously the computer is unafraid. Here, just suggesting a4, starting to shred everything open. If b takes, taking back with the queen and continuing on from here. Yeah, not 100% about that, but yeah, as I said, wanted to keep this bishop preserved. So here I took now to put pressure on the queen. So tempo on the queen, calculated opponent's going to take back, and then we have the other knight jumping into the center to stop this staring contest between the bishops, putting pressure onto the light squared bishop. Here opponent backs up, logical move, and played queen f3 with the idea of bringing the battery to defend against black's battery, which is lined up against our knight here on e5. Here I did calculate this queen g3 as we looked at before, and potentially looking at this knight coming into fork. Did look at this with my opponent as well after the game, suggesting queen h3, but we also have queen h4. And here opponent can't take because they're going to run into nasty moves after here. Queen takes h7 check, and then on the move king f8, and now we can start to take and win that piece back. Picked up a pawn, and the king is quite weak in this position. So opponent can't take. Here g6 is the move from the computer, and then opponent was suggesting g4. So that was interesting line as well. Very interesting, but not quite the way. After the queen comes, g6. Opponent takes with the bishop here. We can go ahead and pick up the knight. And then if opponent continues to take, we can take again on h7 first, and then after the king moves, then pick up the bishop afterwards. Queen takes back, and it's all roughly equal, but yeah, we've at least made some progress here with that queen. So it would have been an interesting line. Computer shuts it all down though, obviously with g6, and now we have to find knight g4, which was actually the move that we did play in the game. So was worried about all that knight fork business on h5. So instead backed up with the knight to g4. Thought this was a decent way to relieve the tension on where the knight was sitting against the queen and bishop battery. So here the game continues. Our opponent could have taken, and I would have taken with the queen, but continues by jumping into the center. Here we do have the ability to take. Was worried about taking and then having the pawn hit the queen with a tempo. So instead took the bishop first, then the queen takes, And then here worried about the knight getting trapped, then pushed h3 to give the knight an escape square after opponent pushes f5. We back up. Opponent brings the rook, trying to bring the rook in a rook lift. We bring the queen here, so offering a trade, but with the idea of being able to redeploy our knight to the f3 square. So was worried about this position, but didn't feel like I had much. This knight felt miserable. Didn't feel like I could really come back. It's going to ruin my structure if I go through the f1 square. So I thought, if opponent takes and I have to take back with the pawn, it's going to ruin my structure, but felt like it was still equalish position, which the computer does agree it's a equal enough position. Perhaps even white's doing slightly better, but yeah, I thought I was doing okay in this position. Here, opponent decides to back up, offering the trade on their terms. So if we take now, opponent's going to take back with the rook. Computer does want that. Computer wants take and rook takes, and then continuing to f4 to shut things down against this pawn advance. Knight f3 is also a fine enough move, but didn't actually take here. Instead, just straight away developed the knight f3, which computer likes as well. Now the rook comes, the rook lift, and unfortunately here I played a massive blunder. Double question mark here for knight g5 this time, as opponent has this really nasty move at e5, and the queen is very much in danger of getting trapped. We have the h4 square, but that's going to be met with the rook, and then we're going to have to take without any other moves available. The knight covers the escape square, the pawns cover any other squares. Perhaps we could have brought the queen back in this situation, but then we're losing the knight, and it's a really terrible position. So very, very lucky that opponent didn't actually see that. They took knight takes. So very lucky to get out of jail on that one. We take back with the queen. Opponent then attacks, and we come back, offering another trade of the rooks. Computer wants queen h4 instead. But yeah, offering the same trade again. Again, this trade isn't good for black. I thought it was fine enough, but again, this is not quite the way. Even though we get this double pawn, it's still fine for white. Here, computer wants d4, so pushing, or e5 still. Although after this e5, we can back up. We've got queen going back. Queen going to h4 does work this time, or even queen or coming across to b4. Try and put some pressure along this diagonal. Still not what the computer plays though, the opponent plays. So opponent actually plays queen e7 in this position. Again, didn't think this was quite the way, but was still worried about a number of different moves. Was worried about d4 and opening up the bishop and the rook against the g3 pawn. So moving the king out of the way. Computer doesn't like this at all. Computer wants the defense to come from the bishop, which is fair enough, using the bishop to defend. But yeah, so we play king f1. Opponent brings the rook, and here still worried about this bishop putting pressure along the light squares. Played f3. Computer deems inaccurate. Rook comes across to f8. Still the computer wants e5 all this time, and finally realizing that that was on the cards, brought my queen into these pawns to try and slow down that e5 advance. Opponent plays rook g6, again trying to put pressure onto this weak backward pawn on g2. Here I played king f2, which I thought was a decent move, thinking I was bringing the rook, but did see this check was incoming. Probably should have spent another couple of minutes on this. Promptly went back to f1, but actually did have g3, which is tactically defends this pawn. Opponent can't actually take this pawn because they're going to get their queen trapped. Now comes rook h1, and this queen is actually trapped here, can't go back onto this file, and can't come back to g4. So yeah, actually could have played g3, but again didn't quite calculate enough, and instead played back to king f1, which computer doesn't like as much as g3. Here, opponent threatens checkmate in 1, bringing the queen and rook onto a battery on the g file. Computer really doesn't like this, considers it a mistake, and here the queen trade is forced, so obviously I have to take. Thought this was the worst of the queen trades, which the computer agrees with. And after rook takes, white is plus 1.5 if and only if white finds a4, starting to threaten to chop down on the queen side, which I did not find. I played king f2 again, thinking I was kicking the rook out and redefending and finally bringing the rook. Rook comes back to g6. We come across, continue with the plan, rook g1, still computer saying a4, best move. Opponent finally plays e5, and I'm running very low on the clock here, running down to 10 minutes here from this 90-minute game. Play f4, and opponent brings the rook to e6. Bring my rook, trying to get the rooks in the right spot for these trades, if take and take. Opponent plays g6, just locking all their structure on the light squares. And here I played b3, king g7, just bringing the king up. Opponent did have rook c8 to put pressure on here. Then we have to try and bring the rook behind. And here we played c4. This is not accurate. It was f takes e5. Did worry me though, as I wanted to take back and keep these pawns together. So here, again, in time pressure, just pushed and didn't realize how powerful d takes c4 is, but opponent missed it as well and took b takes. B takes c4, d takes now, we take back with the bishop. Before it would have been, we can take back with the b pawn. But after this, rook d8, attacking the bishop. And then if we do come back to e2, opponent's going to have this tactic against our bishop, which does happen in the game, unfortunately, anyway. So take, and finally take. Rook e7. Here I thought I was not only attacking the bishop, but I thought I was bringing the rook to attack this pawn. But now, with the tempo move, rook c8, I make the game-losing mistake of bishop e2. This is very unfortunate, and opponent has 20 or so minutes on the clock to find the correct sequence here, which is e takes f4. After e takes f4, still best move. This rook sees this bishop, and this rook now sees this bishop from c2, pinning to the king. Here, king f1 still loses painfully, but this is even worse. Played rook g e1, and opponent found a very beautiful tactic, taking here with the bishop on g2. After I take back with the king, opponent now takes with the rook. We take back, and we get hit with this check. After we step away, the dust settles. We've lost the g pawn, so our pawns are disconnected. there is a 3-on-2 scenario on the king side. And even though I can start to put some pressure on the a pawn, it's not going to be good enough. Rook c6 threatening to fork, or even to threaten against the f pawn. Step away to try and stop the fork, and here we take, which is the best move, but it's completely lost here. We're still down this pawn. Now we're down 2. Can push the a pawn, but we're never going to get far enough. Rook h4 threatens this pawn. Trying to run desperately, but none of it really works. Now opponent can just leave this rook here because this king will do enough work with these 3 connected pass pawns. We push and play on for a sec here, but after all this, even with the checks, it's not going to be enough. And in this position, I resigned, as these pawns are completely unstoppable, and even if we could push this pawn, it's not going to be quick enough. We're going to get checkmated after opponent promotes one of these 3 pawns. So really great game from my opponent here in round 4. Felt like I held on well in the opening and into the middle game. Only the one real terrible blunder, knight g5 the second time. So yeah, not a great move there, but otherwise pretty tactically sound. Had opportunities, even after potentially getting my queen trapped. Still found some great moves here. If I had some ability to find a4, would have been in a winning position. So chances and yeah, more work to be done, but we'll keep going with that into the future. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much. Appreciate your support. That was round 4 of the MCC Classic, and we'll see you back for round 5, hopefully with a win.